E aí, pessoal, tudo bem? Me chamo Ricardo Rocha, sou CEO de Acaso. Estamos aqui no CONARH 2023, no podcast Respostas Humanas. Estamos no 15º episódio aqui, com vocês hoje com um convidado muito especial para falar sobre o futuro do trabalho. O convidado da gente é um cara chamado Gary Bolles. Vou chamar ele já para apresentar para vocês um pouco do que ele faz, mas logo trago para vocês um pouquinho aqui em avanço, né? Primeira coisa é o seguinte, vamos estar falando em inglês hoje, tá? Então vai ter legenda aqui para vocês acompanharem. Mas o Gary, ele é presidente da área de Futuro do Trabalho da Singularity University, que é uma das universidades mais renomadas do mundo em relação à inovação e futurismo, certo? Então, vamos lá, vou chamar o Gary para falar aqui um pouco com vocês, tá bom? Gary. Okay, so I've just introduced everybody of what we are going to talk about, the future of work. But first and foremost, I would really like to for them to meet you and once more, I would like to thank you for talking with us. Gary is a great friend of mine, and I'm really happy that I have the opportunity to talk with you about something we both love, which is the future, and more especially the future of work. So, first and foremost, who's Gary? And more, who's Gary without saying what you do for a living?
Absolutely. So bom dia. Welcome from Silicon Valley, San Francisco. It's wonderful to be connected to you all. So I think of myself as endlessly curious about people and places and technologies. I think of myself as a world traveler. I have a tremendous time meeting people from all around the world. And I'm deeply focused on having a positive impact in the world. So those are the things that tend to drive me in my life.
Oh, Gary. Nice, really nice. I would really love you if you talk about your last maybe achievement, which was the book, the Next Rules of Work, which you have in Portuguese right beside you. Tell me more. Tell us more. What is this book about?
So some of the people listening might remember that there was this global pandemic thing, and that seemed to change a lot of how we work and live. And so it was very important to me to help people to be able to have the strategies for being able to navigate constant change. It's just pretty likely that wave after wave of change was going to keep coming. I actually wrote back in early 2020 saying today it's a virus, tomorrow it might be artificial general intelligence or some AI types of tools, but we're always going to have these changes happening in our lives and in our work. And so that's why I wrote the book, was to help people to understand how critical it is to be able to develop the most effective mindset, skill set, and tool set for navigating a world of constant change.
No, that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. And I think I have to tell you, Gary, we are here in the biggest conference in Brazil, maybe one of the biggest in the world, about HR. And we are all wondering here, what is indeed the future of work? And I think that everybody, the more than 40,000 people present here, they would really love to hear your take on it. I mean, that's not a pretty easy question, but in simple terms, what you think it is indeed the future of work?
Yeah, so a picture I think that hopefully is helpful to people for them to have in their minds is that the changes in how we work kind of go in waves. They're the old rules of work, like 9-to-5 jobs and commutes. I've driven in Sao Paulo traffic. I know how challenging a commute can be. And then there's these newer rules where we're sort of experimenting with what people are calling hybrid work. Maybe you don't come into the office every day. And then there are the next rules. There's these ways that work is transforming around the world. And it's not just about where we work, It's what we do for our work and who we work with and when we work and why we work and all of those different aspects of work. We're all co-creating that future together. And so if there's one mindset I'd want people to take away, is that it's very likely we're going to continue to co-create those rules of work going forward. So there's no sort of static future state to be thinking about. Instead, it's very, very important to be directed in your own work, in the things that drive you, so that you can continually navigate that world of change, because it's pretty likely we're going to all keep on revamping those rules of work.
No, you're exactly right, and I totally agree with you. We've talked about this a lot together, and maybe when he said that the rules of work are changing, the way that we work is changing. Probably one of the main things for me is nowadays, more than any time in our history as human beings, we need connection. We need to be connected with what we do, with the people we do it with the organization we do it for and we do it with. And I don't think that many people have actually realized the importance of being connected to what drives you. And I think that's probably the main change that we're going to see in the next years. The people, they not only they will need to be connected. I think that if they aren't connected, maybe it would not make any sense, you know. So concerning that, what do you think that is the point of connection in work?
No, absolutely. So if we think that work is going to continue to change, and I think we're pretty right in that, work is going to become more flexible. Work is often going to become more distributed, where people are not always going to be in the same place at the same time. The kinds of work that each of us does is going to keep on changing. Then it's important to have a picture in your mind of what I call sort of connective tissue. That is, what is it that binds you, that links you together with others? And in the book, I call this membership. How much membership do you feel in a particular organization? And it might be you really don't have that much commitment, you're not that interested in the work, you don't like your coworkers that much. Oh, that's a pretty light connection in terms of membership. But if you feel deeply connected to the people with whom you work, to your customers, to your partners, if you feel that there is this cohesive connection between you, you're going to want more and more to be doing that kind of work and doing work with those people. And that's something I think all of us need to aspire to, is how we can have that optimal mix of the people that help us to do our best work.
You're completely right, Gary. And I view that the degree of membership, as you told me once, I interpret this as the sense of belonging. If you don't belong in a place, you probably you don't feel that you belong. Actually, you probably won't be there long, you know. And I think that talking about HR persons and what they need to do to make it happen, to people feel that they belong. What do you think it is what do you think that HR has to do with all of this that you're talking about?
So I often say that because I speak to so many chief human resource officers, CHROs, and people who lead in HR in organizations around the world. I often say, this is your time. HR must lead on the future of work, and especially with these artificial intelligence tools, because if you think about what's often called the employee experience, but I think of almost more like the worker journey in their relationship to the organization. From the beginning, where a work role is defined, and in the past we call those job descriptions, and in the next rules, I think we're going to call them more descriptions of the problems to be solved. From the initial definition of what the work is, what we need, the kinds of skills that are needed to be able to perform that work, through the process of finding a human being who has those skills and could be a really good match, they could be a good fit for the kinds of problems that need to be solved, to the process of how they feel connected to their coworkers, they feel connected to their work, and then the ongoing process of continually renewing that. It's like any relationship. If you don't talk to your significant other more than a couple times a year, chances are really good you don't have that close a relationship. Yeah. And it's the same thing in your relationship between the worker and the organization. And so HR, as far as I'm concerned, it's all hands on deck. This is exactly your time to think through that entire journey and then to be leveraging these new tools to be able to help people to build better connections, to be able to help the people who hire to build better descriptions of the problems that need to be solved and the skills that are needed to solve them, to help everybody in the process of continually finding or creating the kind of work that they can do where they can have the best possible impact, create the best value for the organization's stakeholders.
You're exactly right. And I think that in a major sense, in this aspect, you also mentioned about the role of the leadership of the companies, about maximizing the abilities, the tool set and the skill set, but also the mindset of the people in the organization. What do you think they need to do to make it happen? How do you see this happening?
So I think this is probably the single most important place that especially HR professionals can focus.
Yep.
And that's the person who leads. I don't use the word leader much. I don't use the word manager or supervisor much because I think we've sort of lost the message about what those roles need to be. Manager and supervisor is kind of from the old rules of work. Instead, what I say is, I use it as a verb, leading. Anybody in the organization can lead, yes. And so the role, as I defined it, is, I call it the team guide. So the person who doesn't have to have all the best answers, they actually have the best questions. They are there to empower others on the team to be able to continually solve problems. They remove roadblocks so that the team can be as effective as possible. They don't always have to be the person in command or in control, and instead they can be an emblem, they can be an example for how others can lead in the organization as well. And that doesn't just happen overnight. It just doesn't happen automatically. We have to train people to think like team guides. We have to help the people who lead organizations to actually use those same techniques themselves so that they can infect others with the possibilities of the next rules of work, of thinking how they can build better connection and membership between the people who work in their organization.
Nice, Gary. You talked a lot here about some of what you think are the next rules of work, and you talked in these last questions about some of the old rules of work. What you think are the most important differences between the old ones and the new ones? If you could point out 3 aspects. Okay.
So the first is that the old rules of work, which we really inherited from the industrial era, we just accepted them. The old rules of work were about rigidity. That is 9-to-5 jobs, 5 days a week, hierarchy in organizations. The next rules are about fluidity. That is, how fluid can you make things? Can you make work roles where they are constantly changing? Can you help human beings to be constantly changing and growing? So rather than being rigid in the old rules, the next rules we want to be fluid. The second is that in the old rules, we sort of let this whole management thing sort of help us not have to think too much. That is, we just sort of accepted that we had these rigid structures, and we didn't have to be all that intentional, especially if everybody comes to the same office and they're all working out of the same cubicles. And you just sort of get to show up as a manager. You don't have to work as hard. You don't have to think through what's going on in the lived experience and in the work that each person in the team is doing as much. And then the next rules, we have to be more intentional. We can't just leave this process of transitioning to the team guide to chance. We have to be thinking constantly about team members, and especially if you're a distributed team, how is each doing? What's the emotional, mental, and physical health of each member? How can you continually help them to do their best work? So being more intentional is a second aspect. And perhaps the most critical third aspect is that we need to think in terms of the old rules were often about just creating value especially for public companies, for a shareholder. That's it. We just had to get the stock price up, and that was kind of it. And I believe that we're in a new era. The next rules are about a range of stakeholders for the organization. The workers in the organization, the partners, the communities in which the organization operates, the planet. All of these are stakeholders. And it's critical that everybody who works in the organization have this mindset of being continually, what I call synchronized, connected to that purpose in the organization, so that you can create value for all of the organization's stakeholders.
So you told something right now, which I really believe in, which is, I really believe that the companies are nothing different from communities, which are built around a purpose that maybe generates profit, and I think that if we see companies as not only as companies but as community operating systems, we put in the center what you told earlier, which is degree of membership. To talk about communities, you have to talk about belonging. You have to talk about purpose. You have to talk about drive. And this drive, it is also about personal drives, not only community drives. I think that is a sum between those. And in that aspect, what you think that is the role of communities and community thinking in terms of how you can build the organizations of the future?
So I think in the old rules, a lot of the thinking of more traditional people who would lead organizations, managers and leaders in the old rules labels.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the mindset was that many of the activities related to building that cohesion, the connections between workers in an organization, was like almost a tax. Like it's useless. It's not valuable to the organization. I mean, why would I have you do these kinds of activities on company time, making connections with each other and finding out what's going on in each of your lives? And
it used to be kind of quid pro quo.
It used to be, exactly. It used to be, no, do your work, do your job.
Yeah.
You get all your work done, and then you can, do this fun stuff of interacting with each other after hours, not on my dime, not on my paycheck. And I believe that we have to shift our mindset. It's not that you want every single person in the organization to be continually just goofing off and playing foosball. That's not the message. Everybody needs to be effective in their work roles. That's one of the things that motivates us in our work. However, the idea that an organization is a community, that it needs an operating system, that it must have the ways in which people are continually connecting with each other is critical going forward. Because if you want to be able to continue to hire, especially young people, if you want to retain them, if you want them to feel like they can continually have a growth path in the organization, you need, as somebody who leads in an organization, to actually double down on this whole mindset behind community, because that cohesion is going to help you with all of those processes. you're going to find it easier to hire people, you're going to find it easier to retain people, and you're going to find it easier to help them grow in the context of the organization. And if you don't do those things, then you're going to be complaining, why do people not want to come work for my company? Why do people leave my company so quickly? Why do people post negative information about my company on Glassdoor? Because you didn't focus on trying to build that community cohesion.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. I really love to keep talking to you, but I actually have one last question, which probably are two questions inside one question, which is, in your book you talk about a lot about tool sets, and some of the tool sets that are emerging in the past years, but right now I think it's emerging in a great force. They're all concerning AI. And I think that everybody has deep down some kind of fear about AI will affect our work. Some people even are thinking if we'll have work at all. So my question is, how do you see the link between AI and the future of work? And do you think that we'll have work? And if we don't have work, is it a bad thing?
All right, so first off, work has always changed because of technology, going back to this thing called the plow. Right, so work has always been changed by technology. But when you talk about tool set, it's important to separate it into techniques and technologies. So there are techniques we follow, like design thinking and moonshot thinking and that sort of thing. And then there's technologies that we use in our work as part of that tool set. So what's different with this generation of artificial intelligence tools is that they can actually automate a lot of tasks that humans used to do in the past. Well, we've had a reset like that already. It's called the internet. It just took about 30 years to get to this point. And so what's really happening is the pace and the scale of change. It's happening faster and it's affecting more people more quickly. And so it doesn't mean that there won't be work. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you how, the total amount of work that there will be in the year 2050. What I can tell you is that we as humans continually find new ways to leverage these tools and to create new work. So what's really important is not for us to worry so much about whether or not there'll be more work, but instead for each of us as individuals to commit to continually growing, changing, leveraging the tool set so that we will actually be able to be part of whatever work there is going forward. Now, if there wasn't a lot more work in the future, then what we need is a different society operating system. We need to make sure that societies have the supports for the people that don't have work. And we already, Brazil and the US both have some challenges in that regard. And so we have to fix that in parallel with this process of continually adapting to use the tools. But right now, the data doesn't show that a lot of work goes away. The data shows that work changes, and humans just need to change with it.
That's actually a great answer. We have few minutes here, Gary, but just to wrap this up, what you think it is a key message that you want to send the people here at CONARH and the people that work with HR here in Brazil, so that we just can wrap it up and say goodbye and hug you virtually here from Brazil to San Francisco.
All right. Well, and hugs back to you virtually too. So, and to everybody at CONARH. So just briefly, I don't want to make it sound like because I say this is HR's time, like anybody should freak out. Instead, I want you to be hopeful. I want you to feel like this actually is a marvelous time. It's an amazing time to be in such a pivotal role in the organization. What has happened in the past, if you look at parts of the organization like IT, is over time they've needed to get rid of more and more of the very basic repetitive work and focus on the much more strategic work, the high value work, and especially in this case, building better community in the organization. That's as important for HR to do now as it was for IT to do 30 years ago. And so the more you can be leveraging the new tool set yourself for what HR does, you can automate more and more of the repetitive tasks, and you can focus on the humans. You can focus on being that community operating system that helps to continually bind the organization together. And I wish you the best of luck in doing that.
So do I. I think that we can take out of us the machine and let us be what you're best, being humans and spreading love.
Absolutely.
And spreading our natural
hugs.
intelligence.
Yeah, and lots of hugs. Yeah.
So Gary, I'd really like to thank you for participating here, and I hope to talk to you soon, and maybe here at this amazing podcast, which is called in English, it is called Human Answers. So it's Respostas Humanas, which translates to RH, which is HR. So thank you one more time, and it was really, really amazing talking to you, as always.
So good to see you, my friend. So
good to see you. Bye-bye. Então, pessoal, só para finalizar aqui, falando um pouquinho em português, eu acho que a gente tem como tirar algumas conclusões muito importantes desse papo com o Gary, e talvez a mais importante delas seja: haverá mudanças, como sempre houve. Talvez a velocidade dessas mudanças ela tende a aumentar. Os adventos da inteligência artificial, das tecnologias que já aparecem há alguns anos, eles são muito importantes da gente estar levando em consideração. Mas o mais importante é o que fica. O que fica é o ser humano. Somos nós. A gente falou muito aqui sobre empresas se sentirem e se olharem um pouco como comunidades, como sistema operacionais de comunidade. Isso significa, em outras palavras, para a gente dar foco no que é mais importante. É na relação humana. Não existem empresas, existem pessoas. As pessoas fazem empresas. Então, olhando para o futuro do trabalho, eu acho que a gente tem que olhar para o nosso futuro. O futuro dos seres humanos, o futuro de como a gente se sente e se relaciona entre nós mesmos. E foi um prazer tremendo estar aqui com vocês, com talvez um dos maiores especialistas do mundo em relação ao futuro do trabalho, para falar um pouquinho de como é possível a gente se adaptar, e mais do que se adaptar, a gente ser parte da construção desse futuro. Ele depende, além, mais do que de qualquer outros aspectos, da gente mesmo, tá bem? Foi um prazer. Novamente, eu sou o Ricardo Rocha e, enfim, foi maravilhoso estar participando.